Good morning from the Nature Company. I've just come to explain what I personally look for when buying a new Phalaenopsis from the shop. We'll often find that they're very reasonably priced. They're such beautiful plants, we can't resist the flowers. But how do we know which one to choose? How do we know it's going to last? How do we know the blooms are going to be around for long? One of the easy ways, especially to know if the blooms are going to last, is by looking to see if we can catch like fairy glisten off the petals. Then you know your flowers are still fresh. We check that there's still buds that are opening. We check not too many of the buds have started falling off. What we don't want is we don't want little black spots. I would generally try and avoid plants with broken leaves, but that can't always be avoided buying them mass-produced from the shop where they're just shoved up against one another. Eventually this leaf will be outgrown and will fall away and die, and I'll still have these most beautiful little white orchids. One of the other things we carefully look at is we look around the media, making sure that we still all have nice green roots. We don't want to see too many of the dying rotten roots. We look at the top, all the roots look fresh and healthy, being a greeny white color with the silvery shine to it. We know we've got a fairly healthy plant. With these plants, we actually, once we've got them from the shop, we want to allow them to dry out, because invariably they've been sitting in water for a long time. We want to get air back into the pots. We take them out of the cover pots, let them relax, rest for a bit before we put them into anything else that's going to take the light away from the roots and take away some of the air movement. If we can, we'll check in to see that there's no damage or bad markings closer to the stem. We don't want to see fungal marks on any of the leaves. They want to be a nice warm green. We don't necessarily want a deep dark emerald green. That means they've been kept in too darker area for too long, that possibly by moving them out into a brighter area they're going to take a bit of shock. When choosing your Phalaenopsis orchids, I generally wouldn't want to choose orchids where the flowers are already starting to turn down. They're not particularly old flowers, they're still fairly fresh, but they're drooping. This is not something I would generally suggest to buy. Already we've got one bud that's fallen off, so this is not particularly one that I would pick up, especially since here we can see there's already some algae growth on the roots. This would be easy to treat, but as a first-time buyer or a non-professional, you might want to avoid this plant. Rather go for something that's looking fresh, healthy, glossy. Also, we can see some algae growth growing in the container here, down around the roots. This isn't one that I'd particularly recommend you'd be looking out for. If you particularly like the color, then yes, go for it if you can't find another one in any better condition, because this can be sorted out fairly easily. There are also other natural remedies used to help keep your plants free of algae and fungus. Watch out for our new video coming soon, where we use garlic as an organic, natural antifungal and anti-algal. This beautiful yellow also. We always try and tear the packet away instead of pushing it out through the bottom, because often your orchid with the cellophane, the static can catch on the flowers and actually tear the flowers off as you're trying to remove it from the cellophane. There we go. The media's still in fairly good nick, but it's something that I like to do even though the orchid's still in full flower. I like to change out the media immediately. This way you're going to avoid the rotting of the roots, which often happens in shop bought Phalaenopsis. The media's either old or it's grown for high intensity growing situations which we can't replicate in the home environment. So we'd like to change it into a media. Your transplant shock is going to be about equal to any root rotting shock that your plant's going to get from the media rotting away around it. So I just like to get it done straight away. Invariably your flowers still last a good time, and if you're careful when you do it, you don't lose any flowers at all. This is a Phalaenopsis. In the wild, they generally grow on the underside of trees, so they'll generally be on the underside of a branch where the leaves then turn up and the flower spike is pushed out. This way in the wild, they don't have water sitting in their crown. The crown is this central part of the orchid, of the Phalaenopsis orchid. The crown is the central part of the Phalaenopsis orchid. This in nature is generally almost facing down, so no water actually sits in there. So when watering your Phalaenopsis, it's always better to feed from below or water from below. If you're finding that difficult, then watering your plant just at the top through the roots is also okay, but we'd rather not have water sit in between any of these leaves. This will cause fungus growth and cause rot of your crown and your leaf and possibly the stem. Also, being a tree dwelling orchid, the roots generally like to get light, so we try and imitate that natural environment by placing them in see-through pots. This allows the light in. The more light that the roots get, the less likely we're going to have the aerial roots coming out the side and over the top of the pot, but we still do get those occasionally anyway. Don't cut away your aerial roots. They're going to save you from problems that will occur if your media rots and your roots at the bottom of the pot rot. Then at least you know you have healthy roots that you can carry on. So if you're looking for a tidier, neater plant, you put them in the clear pots and you don't put them in a cover pot, because even in a cover pot you're taking away the light from the roots and you'll start finding your aerial roots coming out. And also with Phalaenopsis being tree dwelling orchids, so they're not in media like this all the time. They dry out quickly with the air moving across them. They're not constantly wet, they're not soggy. So we want to make sure we allow the media to drain quickly and hold lots of air gaps so that we can mimic what it would do in a tree. Another thing with Phalaenopsis is they don't have those large pseudobulbs that many other orchids have. Their leaves are quite fleshy, so they do hold some moisture, but they don't have those big pseudobulbs with the reserve of moisture that can take long-term drying out. So we do want to allow it to dry out, but not for long periods. We want to be able to dry and water and dry and water and keep the leaves firm to keep a strong, healthy plant. The repotting I'll show you in another video, but this is just to give you a basic idea of how to go around looking for a good healthy plant where your flowers are going to last a month or longer in your home, giving you all the joy, and making sure that you're going to get longevity out of your plants, and not just use them as a throwaway.
Orchids are a beautiful and diverse group of plants that have captivated gardeners and plant lovers for centuries. But did you know that garlic, a common kitchen staple, can be used to improve the health and growth of orchids?